And how about you, Monica? Do you guys have a formalized strategy or process?
We just sort of finished getting our structured information, enterprise-wide, major upgrades, and strategic enterprise-wide solutions in place. So the organization is now doing a look at the unstructured, the content management. And the assumption, the good news is we may have some pockets of one-offs, but they're small, and the organization is going to do content management from an enterprise-wide perspective with 2 standardized platforms that will integrate with all the line of business applications that do structured management. And I think we actually have the luxury of saying, let's build the 2 as an integrated tool set right out the gate. You know, the assumption was the minute content management, or the minute SharePoint comes up, it's already integrated with our content management repository and our records management tool, so that from the word go, we've got we can manage the full life cycle of both our structured and unstructured content.
Okay. And Tom, for you, do the line of businesses drive their own content strategies, or are you?
Yeah, I think our strategy is one where we centralize the repositories, we centralize some of the software applications, but we then decentralize the processes. So the mortgage lending group has its own business process management, our treasury services group has its own business process management, credit card has its own business process management. Where it makes sense, where those documents need to be accessible, for example, in customer service groups, it makes sense to put them in a central repository. But the business understands what they're doing, what they have to build, they understand the business rules. It doesn't, in our case at least, it does not make sense, in my opinion, it doesn't make sense to make that as a function.
And then much of that customer driven, or is there a sort of big regulatory component that drives the strategy?
Yeah, I think both, right? I think it's customer driven by some of the businesses, but clearly from a regulatory standpoint, responding to the regulations and the changes going on in the industry today is a big part of what we have to react to.
And for you, Cindy, December, we don't have a formalized, right?
Yeah, we sure do. We just recently centralized to a single image processing management solution, and we're finishing out all of our transactional processing, our systems to improve operational efficiencies. And then the next thing that we're going out to tackle is the unstructured data. And the first step of that is creating and ensuring that we've looked over all of our records management policies and solidified those and make sure those are correct. And then we're going to go and build a solution to capture what's been documented there. So it's really a 2-path there. Operational efficiencies first, and then we'll go to unstructured content later.
Okay. Monica, I'm going to ask you a tough subject here. It's hard to define what Enterprise 2.0 is, but let me ask you, do you see that as a part of your content management?
Absolutely. Randall H. just hired a social media expert, and he sits on the content management steering committee. So the assumption from day one is that they are related technologies and that they are integrated. And the organization is just making the shift from the thought that social media and 2.0 technologies are something we need to sort of control to just, it is something we need to enable. Every single worker is going to need access, and we just have to assume that it's part of our environment for every user going forward. And how do we put policies and tools in place to make sure that that's appropriately leveraged? And we've got, we're a big enough organization that we're approaching it from 2 perspectives. First of all, how do we enable it within the organization so that people can be doing collaboration and building teams, cross-functional teams within the organization in a dynamic way? And also, we have to, of course, communicate with the outside world. The general public is our consumer, and they need to have some venue where they can reach out to us and say, why did my cookies not turn out? And, I followed the recipe exactly, and blah, 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 blah. How old was your butter, ma'am? And then also, as a key corporate strategy, we're extremely concerned with the way that the Indian Maiden logo is used out there in the World Wide Web. And so we also need to put tools in place to make sure that we can monitor that and keep track of what folks are doing there. one of my favorite incidents was I walked into the head of legal's office at Land O'Lakes, and there was a miniature size butter pound on his credenza. And he said, that's the last one of those that was made. And I said, what do you mean? He said, look at it closely, it's a knockoff. And it was ski wax that was put into a package, 4 sticks of ski wax that looked just like a Land O'Lakes butter package. The differences were so subtle that he had to tell me that was not butter. It was, and he said, yep, that's what we do. We have to go out there on the web and make sure that people aren't mocking up our product as a way to sell ski wax.
Wow.
And 20 years of public sector experience, I never would have thought that would be a key business driver for expanding to social media.
Cindy, I assume being an education institution, you similarly have to look at E2O.
Well, ETO comes to us whether we like it or not. Our customers, our students, are the young millennials. I haven't heard the senior millennials yet till this morning, but they are Facebook, Twitter, they're doing everything. And so we need to make sure as we deploy services that we're taking advantage of that. Anytime we have an event, we're creating a fan page and using the CRM from recruiting, prospecting. We have to go to where our students are, and that's where they're at. So we have to make sure that we can support that. We have a very open environment. We allow all of that to go on. We have to. It's where our students live and play. But the difficult part is how are we going to capture some of that and leverage and reuse some of that content that's developed there. And that's a challenge we're still looking at. It's there, it's been utilized, but now how do we leverage it and reuse it in a way that makes sense for the university is one of our biggest challenges.
And I imagine with professors doing research and so on, you have to be careful.
Oh, absolutely. And another thing that happens is there's a lot of unstructured data that happens in wikis and blogs with class projects. Group students get together, they work on a project, they create some content. There it is out there somewhere. Whether they use a wiki that we provided for them or a space that we provided for them is not always the case, seldom is. So, keeping track of what's out there and how it's being utilized. We don't have the Indian maiden to protect, but we have a lot of other intellectual property that we need to check on that.
Controls and so on.
Controls, etc. It's important to understand where that data is going.